Hello, friends. Does the idea of downsizing make your chest tighten, like every box you pack means letting go of a piece of yourself? You're not alone. I remember sitting with my aunt, who's in her 70s, as she opened a closet full of clothes she hadn't worn in years. She whispered, "If I give these away, it feels like I'm erasing the woman I used to be." And in that moment, I realized something important. Downsizing isn't just about space. It's about identity, about memories, about who we believe we still are. And here's the twist. What many of us don't expect is that the danger isn't in letting go. It's in holding on too long. A cluttered space can quietly steal more from us than we realize. Our independence, our energy, even how others experience being with us. For many people over 60, there's a hidden fear. What if my home smells old or feels heavy? And my children don't want to visit as often? It's not just about stuff. It's about connection. That's why today, I want to walk with you through 7 brutal but freeing mistakes seniors often make when downsizing, and how to avoid them. These are not rules meant to shame you. They're gentle reminders that can help you keep control of your space, your choices, and your dignity. Because I've been through this process myself, and I know how painful it feels when every object feels like a decision between past and future. And I promise, by the end of this video, you'll discover a way to make downsizing feel less like loss and more like freedom. That's the real gem of today's message. Learning to create a home that feels lighter, fresher, and still yours. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you watching from, and how has your relationship with your home been lately? We read every single comment, and your story might be just what someone else needs today. Now, let's begin with the very first mistake, one that almost everyone makes when they start. Mistake 1. Starting without a plan. Sometimes we walk into a room, look around and think, today is the day I'll finally downsize. But then, within minutes, the energy disappears. You sit down, sigh, and wonder, where do I even begin? That's not laziness. It's what happens when we start without a plan. The truth is, downsizing doesn't begin with action. It begins with clarity. If you tell yourself, I'll do the whole house, your brain panics before you've even started. But if you say, today I'll just sort the shoes by the door, or I'll only touch the top shelf of the pantry, suddenly it feels possible. You can do this too. I remember visiting Mrs. Allen, a 72-year-old widow in Ohio. She confessed that she had tried decluttering for years, but she always failed after an hour. She would start in the basement, then drift into the kitchen, then get stuck in her closet. It felt endless. One afternoon, I gave her a notebook. Together, we wrote her first plan. Clear the single drawer next to the phone. That was it. The next morning, she called me and said, for the first time in years, I felt like I was in charge of my home again. Behind all of this lies a silent fear many seniors carry but rarely speak about. If I can't manage my own belongings, maybe I'm losing control of my independence. That fear is heavier than any pile of clutter. And yet, with a plan, that fear begins to ease. For me personally, I've found that writing down small, specific goals, one drawer, one shelf, one corner, turns panic into calm. A house full of decades doesn't have to be tackled in a day, just one step at a time. One of my viewers, a 68-year-old grandmother, put it beautifully. When I stopped seeing my home as a mountain and started seeing it as a series of tiny promises, I finally began to breathe again. Even research agrees, breaking tasks into micro steps increases your chance of finishing by more than 40%. So here's my gentle invitation. Tonight, before bed, write down just one plan for tomorrow. Not the whole house, not even a whole room, just a drawer, a shelf, or a single box. Let that be your win. You can do this too. And once you have a plan, you'll be ready for the next brutal mistake, one that sneaks up on so many of us, keeping things not because we love them, but because we feel guilty letting them go. Mistake 2, keeping just-in-case items. We all have that drawer, that closet, or that box filled with things we keep just in case. An extra set of plates, 3 old extension cords, coats that haven't been worn in 20 years. The thought is always the same. What if I need it someday? But here's the truth. Most of those somedays never come. And meanwhile, those items take up our space, our peace, and even our freedom. A simple way to break this cycle is to set a time limit. If you haven't used it in the last year, or sometimes even in the last 5 years, it's not a just-in-case item. It's clutter in disguise. You can do this too. I think of Margaret, a 70-year-old teacher I met in Texas. She had a garage stacked to the ceiling with boxes labeled "Someday." Sewing supplies she hadn't touched since the 1980s. 3 coffee makers she kept in case the new one broke. Even rolls of wallpaper from her first apartment. When we gently went through them, she laughed and said, "If I lived 3 lifetimes, I still wouldn't use these." Letting them go wasn't about loss. It was about making room for what she actually needed today. The unspoken fear behind "just in case" is really about security. For many of us, especially as we age, there's a quiet worry. If I let this go, will I regret it? Will I be unprepared? Will I become a burden to someone else? That fear makes sense, but the reality is, keeping 10 broken umbrellas won't stop a rainy day. What helps most is clarity, not clutter. Personally, I've learned to keep only 1 backup, never 5. 1 extra blanket, 1 spare charger, 1 set of dishes for guests. Anything beyond that is no longer entrance, it's weight. As one woman in her late 60s shared with me, I realized my just-in-case pile was really my just-in-fear pile. Once I let it go, I felt lighter, not just in my home, but in my mind. So here's a gentle invitation. Choose 1 shelf or 1 box that holds your just-in-case things. Ask yourself, when was the last time I truly needed this? If the answer makes you smile instead of wince, keep it. If not, bless it and let it go. You can do this too. And once we learn to release "just in case," we uncover another mistake. Holding on to things, not for ourselves, but out of guilt. As if objects could carry our love better than our presence ever could. Mistake 3, confusing memories with objects. Do you ever look at a box in your closet and think, if I throw this away, I'll lose the memory too? It's one of the most common and most painful mistakes when downsizing. We begin to believe that the objects are the memories, but memories live inside us, not inside the box. A gentle way to shift this is to choose just 1 or 2 items that truly bring back the warmth of a moment, instead of keeping every single piece. For example, instead of holding on to 50 birthday cards, keep 1. The one with the handwriting that makes you smile the most. Place it in a memory box or even frame it. That way, the memory stays alive while the clutter doesn't multiply. You can do this too. I think of Eleanor, a 72-year-old grandmother who had kept every piece of schoolwork her children ever brought home. There were boxes stacked in the attic. Yellowed papers that no one had looked at in decades. When she finally sat down with her daughter to go through them, she realized something important. Her daughter didn't want every spelling test or every art project. She wanted just a few treasures, reminders of love and effort. Eleanor kept 1 drawing, a crooked rainbow that said, "Mommy, I love you." The rest, she let go. And, she said later, "I thought I was throwing away my children's childhood. Instead, I made space to actually enjoy the memories with them now." The unspoken fear here is heartbreaking but real. Many seniors worry that if they let go of these objects, they will slowly fade from their family's story, that their children or grandchildren might forget them, or that their own memories might blur with time. I want you to hear this clearly. You are not your stuff. Your presence, your voice, your stories, those are what your loved ones will carry, not the dusty boxes in the attic. From my own life, I learned this when sorting through my mother's jewelry. She had dozens of costume pieces, tangled chains, things she never wore. I felt guilty letting them go. But then I remembered. What I cherished wasn't the necklace. It was her laughter when she wore it to a wedding, the way she danced that night. The memory was safe in me, not in the chain. A woman once told me, I thought keeping every item would keep me closer to my late husband. But I discovered that letting go of the clutter made me feel closer, because I wasn't drowning in grief every time I opened a drawer. That stayed with me. So here's a small step you can try. Pick one box or one shelf of sentimental items. Choose the pieces that bring you joy when you touch them, not pain or guilt. Take a picture of the others if you want. Then release them. You're not discarding your love. You're making room to live it more fully. And as we free ourselves from memories tangled in objects, another challenge appears. Sometimes we hold on, not for ourselves, but because we're afraid of disappointing others. That's the next mistake we need to face. Mistake 4. Assuming kids want everything. Do you ever hold on to a china set, a cabinet full of figurines, or boxes of linens thinking, my kids will want these someday? It's one of the most common downsizing mistakes, and one of the hardest to admit. We keep things because we believe they will carry our story forward. Bien? But the truth is, most children today don't want or can't keep all of their parents' belongings. Their lives are smaller, faster, more digital. A practical step is to ask, not assume. Instead of packing up every item for them, invite them over and say, would you like to choose the things that mean the most to you? You'll often be surprised by what they value. Sometimes it's not the expensive china, but the old wooden spoon you used to stir their favorite soup. By asking, you avoid the heartbreak of keeping everything only to see it later donated, or worse, tossed away. You can do this too. I remember Linda, a 68-year-old retired teacher. She had a full dining room hutch, 3 sets of dishes, crystal glasses, and embroidered tablecloths. She was convinced her daughter would want them. When her daughter gently said, Mom, I just don't have the space, Linda felt crushed. But then her daughter chose a small embroidered runner and said, this reminds me of Christmas morning. That one piece carried more meaning than all the boxes combined. Linda told me later, I realized I wasn't passing on love through things. I was passing it through memories. The unspoken fear here is very tender, that if our children don't want our belongings, maybe they don't want us. But letting go of that assumption is freeing. Your children are not rejecting you when they say no. They are simply carving out a life that fits their reality. And your worth, your place in their lives, isn't measured by how many cabinets of things they inherit. It's measured by the warmth of your presence today. I've seen seniors weep in frustration after estate sales, believing their family's treasures were devalued. But one grandmother in California said it best. I stopped holding on for my kids. Instead, I asked them. They each chose 1 or 2 items that spoke to their heart. The rest, I let go, and I felt lighter, not abandoned. So, here's a gentle invitation. This week, pick one category, maybe kitchenware, maybe linens. Call your children or grandchildren, ask them to choose what they love most, and release the rest. You're not losing your story. You're giving your family the freedom to build theirs. And as we move forward, there's another mistake that often sneaks in, waiting until the very last minute to make these decisions. And that one, as you'll see, can be even heavier. Mistake 5. overestimating the value of stuff. Have you ever looked at an old collection? A cabinet full of figurines, boxes of baseball cards, or even costume jewelry, and thought, this must be worth something? It's such a common mistake when downsizing, assuming our belongings are more valuable than they really are. The truth is, markets change. What was once treasured or expensive often loses demand over time. A simple step to avoid this trap is to check the real value before you store or save it. That might mean looking up recent sales on eBay, asking a local consignment shop, or calling a trusted friend who knows the market. Often, we learn quickly that the emotional value we attach doesn't match the dollar value outside our home, and that realization can help us let go with more ease. I think of Margaret, a 72-year-old widow I met in Arizona. She had saved her husband's coin collection, believing it would fund her grandchildren's education. She carried that hope for decades. When she finally took it to an appraiser, she was shocked to hear it was worth only a few $100s. Margaret said quietly, "I kept this box for 30 years, dusted it, worried over it, and it's not even enough for a semester book fee. But what hurt more was realizing I had held on to it out of fear, not love." The hidden fear here is heartbreaking, but real. That if our stuff isn't valuable, then maybe our life, our years of saving and working, don't hold value either. But your worth is not measured in market prices. Your legacy isn't in china sets or coins. It's in the memories you've created and the love you've shared. I've heard seniors say this with such clarity: nothing is worth anything if no one wants it. That line always stays with me, because it shifts the focus from clinging to items toward treasuring relationships and experiences. So here's a gentle action. If you're holding on to something only because you think it will bring money later, take one step this week to find its real worth. Whether it's confirming with a shop or searching online, knowledge can free you. And if the item isn't valuable, maybe its time with you has already served its purpose. You can do this too. And as we move on, let's talk about another mistake that weighs heavily during downsizing: the tendency to wait until it's too late, leaving others to handle what we couldn't. That lesson is even harder. Mistake 6. Waiting until a crisis. Let me ask you something. Are you waiting for the right time to downsize? Many people tell themselves, "I'll deal with all this later when I really have to." But later often comes as a crisis: a sudden fall, a health scare, or the urgent need to move. That's when sorting through decades of belongings becomes not just stressful, but nearly impossible. A more gentle approach is to start now, even in the smallest ways. One drawer, one shelf, one box. This isn't about rushing. It's about making steady progress while you still have the time, energy, and choice. Downsizing before a crisis means you stay in control of what goes, what stays, and how your story is told. I remember Helen, a 78-year-old woman from Florida. For years, she said, "I'll get to it one day." But when her husband had a stroke, everything changed overnight. Suddenly, she was moving boxes in tears, trying to pack for a new apartment while making medical decisions. She told me later, "I wish I had started sooner. Instead of a calm choice, it became a painful scramble." The quiet fear beneath this mistake is something many older adults feel, but rarely say out loud. What if my children are left to clean up my life when I no longer can? That thought can be heavy, even shameful. But it doesn't have to end that way. From my own perspective, I believe downsizing isn't just about organizing a home. It's about leaving a gift of peace. When you lighten the load now, you give yourself freedom, and you give your loved ones relief from a burden they should never have to carry in crisis. A friend of mine in her 70s once said, "I don't want my kids to remember me as the woman surrounded by piles. I want them to remember laughter, not clutter." That touched me deeply, because it's not really about the stuff. It's about the legacy of how we're remembered. So here's a small, non-overwhelming step. This week, choose one corner of your home and say, if an emergency came tomorrow, would I want my children to face this? If the answer is no, take 15 minutes and start. You can do this too. And now let's move to the final mistake, one that hides beneath all the others. Believing downsizing means losing yourself, when in truth, it can mean discovering a lighter, freer version of life. Mistake 7. Treating downsizing as only physical. Here's something we don't often talk about. Do you think downsizing is just about hauling boxes and donating furniture? Many people do. They imagine it is simply moving things out of the house. But the truth is, downsizing is as much emotional as it is physical. Ignoring that part is one of the biggest mistakes you can make. The practical side is simple. You sort, you pack, you donate, you sell. But what about the emotional weight? The stories tied to that rocking chair, the photo albums tucked in a closet, the set of dishes that only came out at Christmas. If you treat downsizing like it's only physical, you'll find yourself exhausted, resentful, and sometimes even paralyzed. I once sat with Martha, 72, as she opened a box labeled kitchen. Inside were 3 aprons, all worn thin. She laughed softly and said, "This one I wore when the kids were little. This one was my mother's. And this one, well, I don't even cook anymore, but I keep it because I feel guilty letting it go." She wasn't struggling with clutter. She was struggling with grief, memory, and identity. The hidden fear for so many in their 60s and beyond is this: if I let go of these things, am I letting go of myself? Will my life story disappear with them? That's a tender fear, one most people never say out loud. But the truth is, your story isn't in the apron or the vase or the box of old linens. It's in you, in your words, in the people you've touched. From my perspective, I've come to see downsizing as a kind of inner cleansing. When you release the weight of objects, you create space for peace, clarity, and even joy. It's not about denying your past. It's about honoring it while still making room for the present. One woman told me something I'll never forget. I finally realized I don't need 50 photo frames to prove I had a beautiful life. My memories live in me. My laughter, my tears, my love, it's all here. I don't have to keep every object to remember. So here's a gentle step you can take. The next time you hold an object that stirs emotion, pause. Instead of asking, "Do I keep it or toss it?" try asking, "What memory does this bring me? And do I need the object or do I just need the memory?" Sometimes writing the story down or taking a photo is enough to honor it before letting the thing itself go. You can do this too. And that leads us naturally into the closing thought of this video. Because once you see downsizing, not just as a physical act, but as an emotional gift to yourself, you'll understand it's not about losing who you are. It's about giving yourself freedom for the years still ahead. Let's take a breath together. Downsizing is not about rushing or stripping your life bare. It's about making space. Space to breathe, to rest, to welcome joy without being weighed down by things that no longer serve you. You don't need to carry the burden of boxes, closets, and drawers overflowing. You don't need to wait for a crisis or for someone else to make those choices for you. With gentle, consistent steps, you can create a home that feels light and peaceful, one that supports the life you're still living, not just the life you've already lived. Here's what I want you to remember. You're not losing your history. You're making space for your present and your future. Your love, your memories, your essence, they're not tied to objects. They're carried in your stories, in the people you've touched, and in the moments you're still creating today. So I'd love to hear from you. Which mistake resonated with you most? And which gentle shift will you start with? Share it below. You never know who you'll inspire by speaking your truth. And if no one's told you lately, you are not behind. You're not failing. You are simply ready. And you can do this too. Until next time, my friend, be kind to your space and even kinder to yourself.